before I start this talk, I have one lesson already learned from Peter's talk. Never invite your colleagues and friends to the conference because they will steal one of the points of your presentation. Thank you for that. So, good news is I will be a little bit quicker that way. Okay, yes, I normally talk about value. I normally talk about products. I ask a lot of questions why, but not today. Today is about something completely different. Peter was a little bit part of this because I've been thinking about what was bubbling basically in my head for a year, I think, more or less. And this meeting that we attended together in London, it surfaced it. And you will see in a second while. But you already see the first spoiler. It doesn't say rebooting agile. It's agility. I think we are even now, right? Okay, so who recognizes this picture? I need to know. Okay, good. A fair amount of people. Still, I will go quickly through this just as a refresher, and also to for those people who really know this in depth, that I won't be going very deep. So here is just setting the scene. So this is a Kinetic Model by Dave Snowden, and of course all models are wrong. Some more of those models are useful, and I found this really, really useful, although it's actually on the surface of it deceptively simple. The longer I think about it, the more I read about this, the more I'm actually impressed how many consequences it basically implies, and I will try to lead you through one of those consequences, what it means for us in an agile world. But let's go quickly about what this model is about. So it basically divides the world into 4 quadrants and a couple of special zones I will tell you about. And the first one is something that Dave calls a simple domain. He calls those quadrants domains. And basically this is situations when you basically know what to do, right? So you're driving in a car and something like this shows on your dashboard. You know what that is, right? Low on fuel, you just go somewhere, you find the next fuel station, take the pump out, put it in the car, pay or run, depending how you feel about exchanging money for stuff. But anyway, you know what to do. You've done it many times. You don't need any instructions, actually. There is a complicated domain, and to continue the motoring metaphor, you enter this domain when this shows on your dashboard, right? Check the engine. Well, you might open it and, yeah, but what does it mean, check the engine? I mean, yeah, it is there, has hoses and, you know, all kind of moving, or probably they're not moving anymore, but, you know, there are parts. But you can't do much about it yourself. In order to make this light go away, a process has to be put in place, or you need an expert. Someone has to do analysis, you know, what went wrong, you know, how you fix it. Basically, you need to someone has to spend a fair amount of time and an expertise basically to figure out what that was, right? Still, you can probably estimate how long it will take. Maybe you miss it, you know, maybe they tell you we will fix it in 2 hours, they will do this in 3, but they will not miss it by the order of magnitude normally, right? I'll do the jump. There is a chaotic domain. And basically, it's a very exciting domain, but very boring to talk about. It's basically, you know, shit just happened, you have to act. And then later you think whether it's a good action or not, but now you have to act. So this is when you enter a corner, you are in the middle of it, it turns out it's slippery. Wow. It's only your reaction times, whatever you have ingrained in your training. If you have been living in Norway, maybe you are a little bit better at this, but you act, you don't think, you don't have time for this. For the IT domain, this is all kind of security breaches, this kind of stuff, you know, database stolen, or an intruder in your system. You shut down, you know, try to get the situation under control and move it into one of the other domains. And there is this one, there's a sneaky one. It's a complex domain. So the best motoring example I could have thought of was, it's like, you know, bringing a new car into the market. You do a lot of trial and error, you do prototypes, you check with people, you do, you know, all kind of weird stuff. In the end, you don't know if it works or not. You have to try it. So there are two special zones. In the middle, you might be in a situation where you simply don't know where you are. And this guy, don't know if it worked on my drawing, but he's supposed to be falling. It's quite often that you think you are here, in fact you are not, and then you wake up in this kind of situations. But that's not really really important today. This is what is important today. Right? If our business in IT, basically writing software, this kind of stuff, was in a complicated domain, waterfall should have worked. Yeah? This is the fixing the car engine. If you spend enough time, you have enough experts, and you allow them to do analysis, they will figure out what's wrong with your car. If software was like this, you plan, do the roadmap, do the design up front, and then it doesn't matter if it takes a year to implement, because it is possible to analyze it and just, predict the outcome in a predictable way. Yeah, okay. But we tend to say, well, it doesn't work because we think software, at least with the technology and knowledge that we have, belongs there in the complex domain. That's why we have the PDCA loop. That's why we do experiments. That's why we do retrospectives. That's what we learned from this. This is why you have a backlog that you can change the order any moment. Right? Our world is over there. And the whole discussion, do you want to be agile, how it differs, is about thinking how you get the tools or the thinking that used to be good for other engineering practices, like building a bridge is definitely here. And, trying to prove to people, well, software is over there, so those tools won't work, so we are there, we need different tools, right? Could you agree thus far? Does it make sense? Yeah? Okay. So once you're there, what do? You have to get these new skills, right? So you do conferences like this and you learn from the best, right? And I will use a different example, a simpler one to how we learn from the best. But yeah. So do you guys know who that guy is? No? That's Michael Phelps. He won the biggest amount of Olympic medals and gold medals ever in history. He's a swimmer, right? Definitely one of the best. Now, and he looks like this. So if you don't care about swimming, ask him, what do you do to look like this, right? That would be nice to look like this. Well, you need a short advice from the best. So the first response is, well, that's how you do this. Right? This is what we often get from the conferences. Hey, how does the Spotify scale? And guilds and this and that. Oh, let's try it in our organization. But did we get the whole context? Right? Sometimes if you have, you can be given a really, really good advice, but in a context that is so different from yours that it will kill you. Here, if you take the first advice without the context from these guys, it will literally kill you, right? You can't eat 12,000 calories a day. You die, right? So this is the point that was already stolen. I'll be quicker about this. We are talking about agile conference. Do you think this conference is agile? Well, I'm one of the organizers. I can tell you, it's not agile at all. We have to fix the dates like half a year in advance to make sure that the cinema is open for us. With the keynote speaker, we're actually negotiating dates with keynote speaker for 2017. We started it a few months ago. There's nothing agile about this because it has to work like a clockwork, and we want as few things as possible to go wrong while you are here. So, not agile at all. But as Peter already said, it's an adjective. It's not a noun. And in the talk of the person to which you referred, to which Peter referred, it is he says why it was turned from an adjective to verb, because you can sell verbs. It's really difficult to say adjectives. So the real verb is agility. right? And that means the quality or a state of being agile. Now, I invite you to think about the situations that you are, your team or your company, whatever, in these terms. Am I able to be agile? Not whether I'm agile or not. It's not a binary thing for starters. And second of all, maybe you don't always have to be agile. So, agile, I have typed the word agility into Google, and this is what came out, right? It also corresponds nicely with the picture of this acrobat. This is really agility. This is about changing the directions and reacting to changes, environment, whatever it takes. It's not indeed doing the same thing over and over again. It's not like training one thing. It's training to be able to cope with change. And the question is, are we able to cope with change? This is, yeah. So, suppose we are in this agile, that the agility is really meant for this top left quadrant of complex, in the complex domain, right? Where you have to react quickly, we have to be able to experiment quickly, get the quick feedback. Now, I don't know whether this works or not. I have personally never tried it. I have never been part of an organization which tried it. But does it look to you like something that you can experiment with quickly? That you can adapt quickly, or you can adapt yourself to this quickly? Well, for me, and as I said, I never tried it, but on the surface, it doesn't look like something meant for the complex domain, right? But maybe it isn't. Maybe it was never meant to. Maybe only the term agile has been, overused or oversold or whatever. Maybe this is a really good tool, but it's not for the top left corner problems. It's for the top right domain and the problems that we have there. Maybe that would work way better than what we used to call waterfall, but it's still not meant for complex problems or complex systems. So now I have a question to you. You came to this conference and you looked at the list of all the talks that you could attend. I just picked a few of them, right? DevOps transformation tailored to organizational culture. Agility at scale, building feature teams for huge products, right? You probably have seen, some of you must have attended those talks. Try to think back when you were choosing that talk, to visit this talk and not another. Were you looking for a ready-made solution for your problem? Or were you looking for an inspiration and something to experiment with? Yeah? What do you think about these three things? Analysis, good practices, expert. Are these a good things to have in your team, in your organization? Yes? Who says they are completely useless? Okay, one guy. Well, guess what? They are not the tools for the complex domain. In the complex domain, we say, you run the same experiment twice, you can't expect the same result. It might be completely different. It's just like a group of people, right? This is like the really good example, or the ecosystem is another good one. You introduce some change to a group of people, and they behave one way. You do this next week, or the next year, or maybe next day, same stimuli, different reaction. So why do we need experts if every experiment is not guaranteed to give the same result, right? Why we need good practices? I mean, today they will work, tomorrow they won't. It's a completely random thing. They might not work because the forces are beyond our kind of comprehension to predict upon them. Same holds for experts, right? So the tools for the complex domain, or tools of thinking actually, are like this. Emergence instead of predictability, right? Many of you are here from either like big companies or companies that serve or provide services to other clients. How many of you can live without predictability, right? But if you truly think that you are solving this kind of problems with Agile, you just can't have predictability. You have to choose. Are we playing in this field or in that field, right? Same with how do we run this thing. We all kind of agree that we have to do this PDCA loop, Shewhart cycle, Deming cycle, because this is how we learn. But how many of people who are managing groups and organizations or teams like that are patient leaders who let the good things emerge from these experiments, who don't demand telling, okay, you may run these experiments, but but in 2 months I want you to be ready. Well, that's that domain, right? We constantly, and I have this nagging feeling. Yeah, that's about experiments. I have this nagging feeling, but I haven't discussed with you guys that long enough to be any sure about this, that all our training, especially if you were an engineer, were in this domain. So even we on the surface understand, well, software is there. When we really get to this, when we try to do something about it, we are automatically pulled into solutions from this space. Because there are actually, I don't know many tools that were meant, designed, and tested in the complex domain. I know only one, but I haven't looked for them really hard. And this is the sense maker of Dave Snowden. This is the only one I know. Do you know any more? No? Yeah? Have you ever, who of you does actually know about the sense maker from Dave Snowden? Very few people, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope it will have these moments of glory. It's still early. He's still refining this. But yeah, in June or in July, we met him. And he said, I'm separating my research from my business. So these tools are available. Actually, today, you can play with them and just see how they work. Because they are really meant for this kind of problems, right? And just a side remark, that Knevin, if you know it, there is more to it than those 4 quadrants. There is also dynamics, and Dave writes, things move. It's not that black and white that if it sits here, you are always there. You actually, first of all, kind of naturally go between those quadrants, but you can also design these movements to get specific results. But that's a really long story and not for today. So basically, this is the question. This is why he also left this black spot in the middle. Do you know where you are? And do you really know the problems that you are facing or trying to solve? Where do they belong, especially between the complicated and complex domains? Right? I can guarantee to you, not all your problems in software are over there in the complex domain, because otherwise, if they were, none of these tools would work. But still, some of them work. So the Agile is better than the other ways of creating software that were before that. But we are still not perfect. And I suspect that we are not improving fast enough for 2 reasons. One is that we think that all our problems are from the complex domain, and we forget to check. Those guys before us, they had many successes. They have written many books. They have many tools that actually did work, and they would work for many of our problems today. We just have to, freshen up on history again. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the first talk in this room yesterday of Paweł Brodziński about statistical prediction forecasting. Yeah, and from those people who have seen the last talk of Peter Leeson about what was his talk about? In the end, he was talking about the quality. The guy with the bow tie. Yeah, he made this comment, and I don't think he meant to be insulting, but he said it was nice to see the guys from Lunar Logic reinventing the foundations of the SDM. Yeah, I mean, I catch myself as often as anybody else. I keep reinventing this wheel, and I go to a book written in 1950 or 80, and I said, wow, this knowledge is all there. Am I stealing from representation now? Because you are nodding? Oh, no. Yeah, anyway, there is lots of knowledge. And I think coming to conferences like this is really important to stay up, on the new developments, talk to guys from big companies, successful, small ones, big ones. But it's also incredibly important that we don't forget the past, because many problems that we face have been solved because they are not over there. They are still here, and we should be happy that many of our problems are still here because we may know how to solve them. Thank you. I know I finished early, but he stole my story.
Yeah, so we still have 10 minutes. So please, do you have any questions for Łukasz? Anyone? Okay, there is a question. Good. Hi, it will take long time to take mic up.
You're probably not recording these questions. That's why I can step out of the spotlight just to see the person.
Okay, lady just moved her hand up and left. So
you wanted the question? Oh, sorry.
Also,
there is no question.
You saw it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Thanks. Very interesting presentation, Łukasz.
Thank you
for that. Okay, so my first question would be: is there a good way of recognizing the problems, to which category they belong, so that it's easier for all of us to adjust the tools correctly, or to, how to find out where we are, basically?
Let me skip the slides, go back with slides so everybody will know what we are talking about. So that's your question, right?
Right.
So,
and I mean specifically between complex and complicated, right?
Yeah, I know that's the tricky one, right? This is what we are struggling with. So first thing to notice is, before you actually try to figure out, there is a step before that, and this is standing in this black spot in the middle. You have to doubt that you actually do know that, right? So this is much more important, actually. I'm not avoiding your question, but this is much more important to take a moment and try to think, okay, where am I? Yeah? And the way to distinguish between this is actually very well written up on many different levels by Dave and other people, so I'll be just giving a short version. Basically, if this is something that you have seen before or is similar to something that you have seen before, and then kind of a problem that with the enough expertise and time you think it can be solved, it's most probably there, right? Okay, let me rewind. You will never know for sure. You have to try. Yeah, but these are the problems over the complicated domain. This is just analysis and experts. I think these are the best two indicators, right? If it feels like you can, have an answer in a reasonable time with the people that you have, then you just do it. Because this is also a question of availability of resources to do this. Because if you don't have the experts, so for some people it could be a complicated problem, but if you don't have the time or the expert, you have to, probe at it and treat it as a complex one. And then if you are probing a complicated problem with those complex tools, sooner or later you will notice, oh, that's how it works. And for your organization, for your mind, for whatever, it just shifts there. Yeah. But if no one ever analyzed it and no one came with a definite answer, it's over there.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, if I don't know the answer to the problem, or anyone in the organization doesn't know clearly the answer to the problem, then we're probably in the complex and we should probe and see if we find the answer quickly enough to move to complicated. If we don't, then we treat it as complex and try to solve it with the complex methods.
If you are using complex tools for a complicated problem, it will take you longer probably. Maybe you won't arrive at the best solution, but there is a small chance that you will fail. But if we turn it around, if you have a complex problem and try to fit into the complicated tools, this is every time Agile fails, it's for these reasons, like estimation of tasks. I mean, we have so many talks about this. It's really, at least with the current state of art, not a complicated problem. This is why Paweł Brodziński said, we just sample and do statistics over it, because whatever time we put into this, we are not able to arrive at a precise and correct number. Yeah.
Thank you, Łukasz.
Okay, so this was your first question. You said.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
There's
Thank
another
you very
one.
much.
Okay.
I'll just pass the mic. Thanks.
I actually don't have a question but a comment to Pavel as well, because when you were talking, something came to my mind. Some of you might have seen a presentation from my two colleagues yesterday about salary formula at El Passion. And introducing salary formula is a good example of dealing with a problem. And whether it's a complex or complicated problem, it matters. Because if it's a complicated problem, then you can just try to figure out the best possible model and then implement it. If it's a complex problem, then you don't really bother. What happened was that we just continued to analyze, and we've been coming up with different cases, edge cases, and there were just so many of them that this made us believe that this is not the right approach. So at some point I just decided, we just have to move on, implement this, see what happens, and then take it from them. And as you could see yesterday, this worked. So this is another way of kind of deciding. If you have too many cases or too many doubts, maybe it just worth to try it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
Have 2 more minutes if you want to use them. Oh yeah, here. The mic is behind you. Yeah.
Hey everyone. Well, that could be a question to you, Łukasz, as well to Peter, because I'm interested in your thoughts when agility, as we like it and as we try to apply it, meet with the harsh reality of budgets, of CEOs, of expectations, and maybe we have only 2 minutes, but maybe what are your experiences? Any ideas that you could throw out to kind of meet these two worlds or make these two worlds work together?
Want to start?
When I showed you the ODA loop, one of the things that Boyd said was that in a state of war, or in our context, in kind of a conflict situation, okay, see the conflict as friction and try to understand the friction. And then you can start decomposing it and find your answer to it. That's where, like I was saying, trying to find out which respond and trying it very quickly. And therefore I think also the kind of between the complicated and complex, when you're trying something, it will work, it will not work. If it doesn't work, do it quickly again. Okay? So just see the budgetary things or the human resource side or whatever, trying to find them as frictions and find out what can you do, what is their Achilles heel. In the budgetary system, I mean, Niels was here, think about quality control. What is, if your problem is implementing quality control, something up front, because of budget, they don't have money, well, the Achilles heel is pretty much, in my view then, well, the alternative is a lot more expensive, so I have to make people understand that. So I have to understand what the friction is, and I have to attack it. So that would be my response to it.
I would just add to this, in practice, when you change the foundations of part of your company, suppose you do agile transformation, that's always an easy example, that you have kind of a traditional one, and then you do this from the bottom. You change the team, exactly what Peter said. You introduce friction between this team because they are now operating differently. They will not give you predictability. Well, in the long run, they will give you predictability, but you want promises for them. That's the friction, right? And Peter, being military, says attack, attack, attack. Not always possible. Sometimes you can find a padding or a interface or whatever you want to call it. So put a person, for example, in between. There's actually a person here, Krzysiek Majewski, are you here? No, he left. So I used to work with this guy back in one of the telecoms here. He was excellent at this. So he shielded the whole team. The organization was, governed one way. He basically shielded his team, and they did miracles, basically. No one ever performed that quickly. And the organization was not absorbent, but, well, in the end, it worked.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.